Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Frontline Ready. This is an automotive news power training webinar, and is being brought to you today by Reimagining. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dave Versicle. I am the Chief of Editorial Operations here at the Automotive News Group. And before we get started, let me share some tips to help you be frontline ready for this webinar. First, you are free to ask questions at any time. In fact, we welcome you to do that. Simply type the question into the Q&A box. You're going to see that box on the left side of your webinar window. Hit submit. The questions are going to come to me, and I'm going to try to get our speaker to answer as many as we can toward the end of this session. Also, you can make the slides bigger. Just grab the frame with your mouse and pull it to the desired size. And to download the slides, click on the folder icon, which you're going to see there at the bottom of your console. Our speaker today is Mike Boyd. Mike is the founder of Reimagining. He developed the concept while working at car dealerships, and his company is now part of V-Auto, which you all know is part of Cox. Oh, and in addition, true to his used car roots, he is a licensed auctioneer. So we're not going to ask Mike for his auction voice today, but we are going to ask him to get started. Welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. So, reimagining frontline ready. When we look at where the market is and where the market's been, dealers have always struggled with getting the product from the back to the front. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I always like to start off with my grocery store analogy. And if you've met me or if we have talked, you hear me talk about it a lot. And there's a reason why I love to use the grocery store analogy. And the reason is that we are extremely similar, and so are our customers. We both have to pay a tremendous amount of attention to desire and demand, and time is not on either one of our sides. And that consumer demand is constantly changing, and their tastes are evolving. So just like produce, we have to constantly be moving our inventory. And that inventory starts to rot from day one, just like our cars. From back to the front and making sure that we have what the consumer wants ready for sale when they want it. And the amount they are willing to pay drops every day as your inventory gets less shiny. But we can only move as fast as our inventory is ready for sale, or as we've always said in the car business, frontline ready. Which brings us to the question today. What does frontline ready mean? The term frontline ready originated a long time ago when you literally had to have your car on the front line, ready for sale, or it would not be seen. Those were the days of everybody loading up the car and driving from dealership to dealership. There was no internet, and information moved slow or not at all. Today, your cars are effectively available for sale on average within 6 to 12 hours of either taking them on trade or purchasing them. And they're on your dealer websites with stock photos, options, and your dealership's information saying, come buy me now. And the clock has started. And that's when the trouble starts, because we have spent years conditioning our consumers, advertising to them, and training them to move faster. The good news is they are, but that puts pressure on us. So Frontline Ready today is a mixture of not just the physical pieces of putting the right person on the right car at the right time and getting that raw product finished, but it's also marrying that with your digital merchandising, completing that full circle. So average days of Frontline Ready. Now, being part of Cox Automotive, I get access to a lot of information from dealers all across the United States, and they all want to improve. And they want us to help show them areas for improvement and growth. So I started to dig into some of the timelines. The actual chart you are looking at is pretty scary. 49% of dealers say that it takes them between 8 to 16 days to get their cars frontline ready. And honestly, I have to say, I think it's much higher, because the majority of dealers do not yet use software to manage the reconditioning process, which means they're guessing. Or worse, the person who handles the process, the person whose job is to handle getting them that information, is the one they go to. And I want you to think about that. The person who you're getting the information from is whose job depends on that number. Call me silly, but I would have to think that that number may not always be right. I mean, self-preservation does kick in at some point. If you or your team cannot click a few buttons and see for yourself in a matter of seconds where your store is, you truly don't know. Good news is, with technology, there is hope. Overwhelmingly, dealers are starting to embrace that time is more important than money, especially now when you look at the current environment we're in. And that's controlling how long it takes to get their cars truly frontline ready can mean all the difference between selling cars for fun or selling cars to make money. So we're going to get into some things we can do to improve this process to help redefine what frontline ready means today at your dealership. So reconditioning best practices is where we're going to start with. Reconditioning and inventory best practices. The first part is knowing your inventory. The first step in successful inventory management is to know your inventory. We can never lose sight of the fact that the whole reason we recondition cars is to keep cars available for sale. Period. Our job is to sell cars and to sell cars profitably. And the speed in which you correctly and efficiently recondition your cars will have direct impact on your dealership's ability to stay profitable. And every decision you make should be based on what is best for that inventory. And knowing your inventory involves things like, one, and some of these are pretty simple, but performing daily stock level checks. You cannot sell what you don't have. But too often, stores sell out of their top performing products. And not only can this lead to missed sales opportunities, but it can also prevent customers from returning down the road. So it's not just about selling today, it's about selling them tomorrow. Now, fortunately, by examining historical sales data and tracking your inventory levels, you can better predict your buying needs and ensure that your store is always well stocked. And this data will provide you with what we call demand forecasting. And this is the key to managing those stock levels, truly understanding what you sell and how many you need to have in the pipeline and on the front row and how many being worked on. Number two, identify your most productive inventory. Do not, and a lot of dealers get caught on this, do not focus on leveling out your quantities across all your makes and models. Instead, purchase more of your best-selling products so they don't run out of stock. Do not waste your valuable storage space and your money on too many slow-selling cars. And I know whenever I talk to dealers, they always say it's impossible to find the right inventory at the right price. But if you think about it, I want you to really guess how many cars are available today alone at auction. On average, there are over 270,000 cars available every day. And there is software available that will show you not only where they are, but which ones are the right fit for your dealership. So the reality is there are no excuses. The only excuse I've heard, and it's a horrible one, is just I don't feel comfortable learning something new. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So bottom line is you can stock what you need to be successful at all times. And you always have to be looking for that right product. Number three, always keep track of your aging or distressed inventory. And I say aging or distressed because there's a lot of different reasons why somebody will walk away from your car. Now, we all know that old inventory can quickly eat into your profits. But what's worse is it will prevent your store from bringing in new stock while increasing your carrying costs. Managing your inventory properly will help you avoid these problems and ultimately lead to increased profits. But on distressed and aging inventory, discounting inventory should never be your first choice. You should have a plan. To push slow-moving stock, I would rather have you consider a couple of the following strategies. First, change up the merchandising. Look at what you're actually saying and how you're doing it and how you're saying, come buy me. Physically move it to a more prominent location on the lot because there is physical traffic and digital traffic. Add new visuals, change up your window stickers, and group the slower moving, less performing products with faster moving products to get eyeballs on the cars. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting your own people's eyeballs on the cars. Second, digitally change up your online presence and the message. Does your message resonate? Is it painting the right picture for the right price? New pictures, new content. And third, if you're going to discount your car, because at some point you will, do it first by repricing. Then show the discount on the car. people are trained to believe what they see. But if that vehicle has reached a preset time or you're working a plan, pull the trigger. Always stick to the plan. Concentrate on reinvesting that money as soon as you can rather than coming up with reasons to hold on to it longer. And you need to invest in an inventory management system. But most importantly, you need two of them. One for managing the inventory and one for managing the reconditioning process. Because in the reconditioning process, there's a lot of touch points and a lot of things that have to happen correctly. And they both have to work together. Nobody wants more dashboards. The days are over on saying, I have a guy or gal who handles my reconditioning. They're gone. And if they're not, they're killing you every day. That person cannot and has not been able to keep up with the market. It's impossible to. There is simply too much changing in our industry as to how we make money. And a good software is constantly being evolved and being updated based on real-time feedback and need from dealers just like you, but all across the United States. Knowing your vendors. When I say vendors, this is not only external third party, but this is also your internal. This could be your own service department, your own detail shops. We have to pay as much or actually more attention to our vendors as you do your inventory. Who do you have doing what? When do you have them doing it? And where are they doing it? Get to know them and their capabilities. Because in today's market, they're playing a bigger part in whether or not you make money. And some of the things we need to consider when deciding who to use, one is location. Are they an on-site provider of work? Or will they have to move your car somewhere and then bring them back? Some questions that nobody ever asks is, hey, how far away is it to where you're going to work on my car? And I need clear definition of where my car is going to be at all times. How long does that job take to complete? Even something as basic as confirming they have the correct amount of insurance in place before they do work can pay huge dividends. What you don't want to do is have to ask the question of what insurance they have or if they have insurance when they tell you there's a problem. And these are very sensitive areas for exposure because at the end of the day, you're the one at risk. And especially if they're driving your cars off your lot. Stability. How long have they been in business? How long have their employees been with them and their customers? Tenure is a great sign of stability. How's their reputation? We're all car guys. Within a few calls, we'll know somebody who has done business with them. Let's find out what they're really about. A company that's been in business for a long time should have a solid reputation with their customers. Investigate. Make a couple calls because they're going to be handling your money because your cars, that's just money. Reliability. Will they deliver when they're supposed to? And in the condition you specified. Always inspect the job. Sometimes it is best to deal with the big companies. They generally have the resources and the backup resources to deliver even during a problem. But I've had wonderful success with smaller, more boutique shops. You may get more attention, possibly better service due to your importance to them. You're not just a number. But I always recommend you have at least 2 providers for every service. Your main person who gets the lion's share, and they know they're the main person. And then the backup waiting for a shot, and that helps keep your main person in line and on their toes because it's a business. I don't need more friends. I need good coworkers, people who are business-minded, who want to make money and be in business for a long time. Brings us to competency. Are their practices and equipment up to date? Have you looked at their equipment? How well trained are their employees? Because they're the ones that actually do the work. Are they business-minded? Do they have a good understanding of what your wants and needs are? Because each dealership's different. Your expectations are going to be different based off your brands, based off your go-to-market mindset. Take the time to get to know them and make sure that your goals align. And finally, price, because you need the information to be able to price the job. But be fair. They're in business just like you. They have to make money too. And if they're not making money, they're not going to do good business with you. Spend the necessary time to explore what the going rate is for the job. So if we're talking about a detail, what should a good detail cost? Don't go with the lowest price, go with the best value for the money. So what job and job quality will you expect, and then pay according to that. I would much rather overcomp a person doing work for me and be first in their thoughts than undercompensate them and be underserved because they feel like it's not a fair transaction. Supporting your tools with your talent. Now, I have to say this, but the fact is, you can still use whiteboards, your phone, Google Docs, or whatever contraption you have to help you manage your inventory. I've seen nails in walls where people just move keys down. Anything is better than nothing and winging it. But make sure you understand you are leaving yourself and your dealership up for big problems at a later date. Ever heard of don't put all your eggs in one basket? You have to insulate your process. And you have to create a process that everybody understands what it is. And give yourself a reconditioning management tool to manage the process by. Now, I keep saying process. Notice I did not say the people. The hard fact is people will come and go. You have to have a rock solid and repeatable process in which to hold your people accountable to. So there is no gray area. Everybody knows what that job to be done is. That's going to help insulate your dealership from turnover and staff changes because the people who are there understand what needs to get done and they can step up and help train the next people in. Do not make the mistake, though, of thinking, and I get this a lot when I talk to people, that a program by itself will take care of itself. You don't just hire a software and turn it on and it fixes your problems. You first need to find the talent and then train and work with that talent to understand the proper use of the tool so that there are zero questions on either how to use them or what the desired outcome is to be, the communication piece. And you need a tool that manages from both a profit perspective and a job to be done perspective. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about job to be done. Because really that's what we're talking about. If it's a detail, what does that detail mean? What is that job they have to have done, and what does done mean? Because there are a lot of ways to both make and lose money. And there are tools that will help you do it right. But I cannot stress enough, a tool is only a tool if the hand that wields it knows how to use it. A hammer can do wonderful things unless you don't know how to use it. And why do I keep saying tools? Because I would much rather hire a tool for hundreds of dollars per month than throw headcount at the problem, which is exactly what we do in the dealership world traditionally. And when you find that right tool, it's all about enforcing use. If it does not mean enough to you and the management team to enforce use and train people until they get over the hump and pain of adoption, do not expect them to do it if you're not willing to enforce it. So whether or not you're going to get pushback, of course you will. Nobody likes change. What we do like is being more profitable, being more efficient, making our job easier to do more. The right tool will do that, but you have to enforce them using it until they get that aha moment of, that's why we hired that tool. Tying inventory control to sales and operations. Technology, tools, and talent, the 3 T's, technology, tools, and talent. Do not separate your inventory management from your sales and marketing, which is what we do traditionally at the dealership. You have sales and marketing, they have their own meetings, and then you have the actual people selling the cars and buying the cars, and there's not a whole bunch of communication between the two. Rather, if you tightly integrate them, everyone will gain a better understanding of the overall business operation, which will give you better control over your inventory. I mean, I really think about it. How can you effectively plan an acquisition strategy and reconditioning plan if you have no idea what marketing is doing? Or vice versa. how can marketing effectively bring more people to the table if they don't know what you're doing? Effective marketing depends on the information of where you need help, what inventory is available, and what your sales goals are, and align them so that everyone involved can plan and then execute on their part at the right time. So now getting into turning your vendors into business partners. And how do you do that? Well, first, understand their business. And I do not mean you have to be able to detail the car or perform the job they do for you, but you have to have an understanding of what they do and what they go through. And this will help you to not only control the quality, because remember the grocery store analogy? Quality sells, but it will also aid you in communicating with them correctly. Also, understanding their setup may put you in a good position to head off an issue before it becomes a problem. That's why you're managers. And you may also be able to negotiate a lower price based on the length of your relationship and the amount of work being done. Now, don't confuse that. Remember, I said earlier, I'd rather overcomp and get over-delivered. I am not a proponent of just cutting their price, but it's a business. I would rather concentrate on paying the right price for the right job. And if I'm providing them with the majority of the work, that means that they have the opportunity to become more efficient because they're going less places, then there should be some return on that, because every dollar I spend is an investment. But then you have to hold them accountable to whatever that agreement is. Communication, the number one pain point at dealerships across the board, sales talking to managers, managers talking to vendors, and vice versa. Communication with the vendor. Find out what their chain of command is and have a plan in place for when, not if, an issue occurs. When you have an issue, if you've already vetted them and you have history with them, give them the opportunity to correct it. If you stick with a vendor, and remember this is both internal and external, just whoever's doing the work, through a rough patch or time, you may be glad you did in the long run, because you will learn more about them and how they handle an issue than you ever will when things are going great. Build a better relationship. Work closely with them to align both of your efforts. Remember, you both have to make money. You depend upon them to provide a service. You have to sell what they did and get back more money. So align both of your efforts to reduce problems on both sides to become more efficient. And this goes back to communication. Rarely do I see that they know how to communicate with you or the leadership team. And you are their client. So clear communication heads off problems, allows you to align the goals and to help get rid of blockers to that efficiency. But hold them accountable. Set clear expectations on the job. And this goes all the way back to your salespeople, to anybody at the dealership. Everybody should have a clear expectation on what their job to be done is and what good is and what bad is. But make sure they understand what you're expecting to be delivered and provide the right tools for them to do their job and follow through. So hold them accountable. You should perform random spot checks, quality control. Audit the work that's been done. A policy that I have and have always instated at every dealership was that every car has to be touched at least by somebody after it's fully done. That's a quality control check. But also digitally, if you're using a tool to help you manage that process, that also gives you the heads up before issues arise or where you can get involved sooner. And again, aids in that quality control. And again, you would be so surprised how many times I hear that it's the dealership employees, not the people doing the work, are the problem. That somebody at the dealership is impeding the work from getting done in a timely manner. So remember, the cornerstone of any process is really simple. It's communication. So when we're talking about communication, meet regularly for recon progress. Very few dealerships do this, but more are, and it's extremely important, probably one of the most, if not the most important meeting you're going to have during the week. And I'm not just saying it, do just once a week. Do what makes sense for your store and your size and your volume. But schedule and attend regular reconditioning meetings. That means you. Discuss and call out both what is working and not working. Don't just go in with problems. People want to hear where improvement's been made. It reinforces good behavior, but then you also need to be comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to call out what's not working. And the first natural reaction for your people in these meetings will be to be hesitant and standoffish. Just expect it. I mean, really, I've been doing this for 25 years. When was the last time you had a meeting at the dealership and it didn't turn into a blame session? That's another powerful thing of using technology. It's just data. It doesn't like anybody. It doesn't dislike anybody. It's just data points. And you have to be ready for both giving and receiving a criticism. But everyone in the meeting has to walk away feeling that it was productive and that it backed the core team's goals of getting more cars frontline ready faster. And that you are working as a team. That means everybody has a job to be done. Everybody comes in for the win. And we have to work to make the process better. So start off at the meetings, some simple ideas. It doesn't have to be super long, especially the first ones are going to start off a little slimmer as you start to figure out, what that cadence is. But start off by recapping the previous week's meetings and monthly goals. If it's your first meeting, let's talk about what our monthly goals are. Where are we at in relation to where we should be? Start building that team of inclusiveness because everybody has to work together. Remember that whole merchandising, marketing with reconditioning? Everybody has to work together. Some topics you need to discuss in the meeting, though, it's very simple. What is our current reconditioning time? What are our short and long-term goals? You should have both short and long-term goals. What can we do to make an immediate impact? And then what can we do for a bigger impact that may take a little bit longer to do? And then how do we do that? Let's plan it out. What problems are we encountering? And what can we do to mitigate them, both short and long term? So if somebody has an issue or has a blocker, let's put a brain trust together and say, hey, great, what's the fix today, but what's the fix for tomorrow? Or can it be fixed today? Involve people, and then you'll see that inclusiveness really start to pay off. And finally, number 5, do we have the necessary resources to accomplish our goals? And resources are not just money. It is both people, too. Now, turning your reconditioning spend into an advertising benefit. Now, you heard me talk about data. What you do every day in your job is your secret weapon. That's the data. Those are data points. Everything your vendors are doing, both internally and externally, those are data points. It's giving you the information you need to make smart, informed decisions if you're paying attention. But most importantly, it can be used to sell you more cars, faster, more efficiently, and more profitably. You should look at your reconditioning spend as a positive differentiator. You invested money. You didn't spend. We always say spend, but really a spend doesn't come back. An investment is a strategic play on your money to get a return higher than what you spent. So the right money on the right car at the right time. And that's a big if you work to plan. If you're still winging it on spreadsheets, Google Docs, pencils, whatever, do not complain about the results you're getting. You should expect a positive return on your investment. And then take that information, that data, those data points, and use it to make your cars and your dealership stand out. Do not expect or ask your consumer or even your salespeople to ask for anything. Human nature says if you ask them or expect them to ask, they don't. They're not going to. It's invasive, and most times, honestly, they just don't know what to ask or how to ask it. Be forthright. Tell them what you did. If you spent money to recondition a car, tell them what you did. Proudly display and market your reconditioning process. I've been doing this for a long time, and things have changed. We used to hide everything we did. And when I would ask a manager, when I first started chasing bumpers, hey, I have a consumer who wants to know, what we did in service, and they would say, none of their business. And unfortunately, some dealers still do that. But really today, dealers need to understand, and more are moving that way, And they get it. We're doing the right thing now for our consumers. Because of the market, we really don't have a choice anyways. It's very competitive. And overall, dealers are spending more than ever to get a car ready for sale. And to be competitive, we have to price them right off the rip. The velocity model. The right car at the right time. We are extremely conscious of surveys and customer satisfaction. Everybody is. So show it. The fact that you spent money to put on new tires and fully service the vehicle is only valuable if people know. Those new tires are only a marketing benefit if marketing uses the information to make it part of the car's marketing plan prior to the consumer showing up. Sales can only talk about it if somebody asks about it. You want sales to know what's going on so they can be very forthcoming. They can use that as a market differentiator. Somebody once asked me what the difference was between marketing and sales, and the answer is actually really simple. Marketing's job is to find Mr. and Mrs. Right. Sales' job is to find Mr. and Mrs. Right now. Now, those are two very distinct mindsets and different jobs, but they need to work together. And both sides of the fence can utilize that information and that investment to create a more compelling message to get more people there, either virtually or physically, to sell you more cars. And it is absolutely proven that selling cars is more profitable than selling money. And look at your sales teams. Look at your processes. Are you selling the price of your vehicle, or are you selling the benefit of buying that car? Quit selling money. So reconditioning and merchandising, they have to work hand in hand. So like here you see a picture of actually a location of a vehicle. The biggest call out we hear from dealers is knowing where the cars are. And it doesn't matter what your job to be done is. It doesn't matter if you're the person doing the work, you're the person selling it, or you're the person who's marketing it. If there's clear lines of communication, you're marketing the correct car at the right time. You know what's inbound, you know what process state it's in, and you can sell accordingly. That's much more efficient. And that goes back to that communication. But it's communication across the board. So now we get into, do you have the right people? And these are some hard questions. You really have to look within. Do you have the right people and in the right places? And this could, again, internally or externally. At your dealership, have you created a culture of accountability and inclusiveness where people, regardless of what their job title is, feel empowered to speak out and hit that stop button on the entire process when it starts to derail? Because that's what you want. That's when people actually have a vested interest and they care about the outcome. But they have to be able to do it without fear of retribution. If they do something wrong, there's going to be retribution. But if somebody points out an opportunity or something that is not working correctly, you should applaud that. They are part of the team. Do your people feel and understand that they're part of a team? And as such, understand that to be successful, we have to depend on each other to accomplish the dealership's goals. Their daily goals, their monthly and yearly goals. So ask yourself, do your people, sales, management, vendors, internally, externally, do they truly know what success means at your store or what that metric or number is? I engage with a lot of dealerships, and a lot of times I can just go up to different people, it doesn't matter what their role is, and they don't. They're just in their own little bubble. Do you have enough people? Sometimes that's the biggest issue. We're overtaxing. And people really shy away from saying, I can't handle it. And that's a moving number. There's a lot of different factors that play into it. You have to dig into your operation and your needs. Every job to be done has a cost of doing it and uses resources, both physical and monetary. First thing I always start out with is leveling expectations. Take it to the most basic level, making sure everybody knows what that job to be done is I expect from them, and get their agreement that they can deliver that end job. And if they say they don't feel comfortable with that, ask them why. Is it a blocker we can remove? Or is it some way we can figure to help them? Or is it the right person, right? So maybe it's not enough people, it's just the right person. But based on the experience and how you measure it, you should be able to create a baseline for every job to be done. So it's all about the right output for the right job by the right person. Then it just becomes a matter of what you want to accomplish. So think about it from a business perspective. Is your dealership or dealerships, are you in a growth mode? For whatever reason, market or just internally, are you in a growth mode? Or are you more interested in harvesting from your existing plan? Are you comfortable where you're at? And then it's just about optimizing internally. Both require different actions and resources. And your people are your greatest resource. So remember, every job has an optimal output per person figure. You just need to find out what yours is. So why does this all matter? Very first slide, I said, look, our job is to either sell more cars or sell cars more efficiently. Hopefully you're doing both. But why does it really matter? In order to sell cars, you have to have vehicles, so you need to get them reconditioned. You need to be able to do it in an efficient manner. But you need a steady supply of clean, serviced, and sellable inventory in a timely and repeatable manner. That's where the process piece comes in. You got to get rid of those hills and valleys. You got to be able to just go on that straight upward slope. By now, I'm pretty comfortable that everybody on the call understands what turning your inventory means and what a daily holding cost is. But if not, let me explain. On the most basic numbers, if you sell your inventory, so if you're holding 100 cars and you sell 100 cars that month, so every 30 days you sell out, that means you've successfully rotated your inventory 12 times a year. Pretty simple math. So now I'd like to break it down into an even smaller and more palatable calculation on how much of a difference paying attention and creating a process makes. So if through better reconditioning and merchandising practices, bringing those together, we can drop the number of days it takes you to sell a car by only 2 days. That could be by getting your car frontline ready faster, making sure you can deliver the car when the consumers are there to buy it. Just by doing what you do, by doing it better, that will effectively give you a 13th month for free. That's 13 months worth of gross in the 12-month calendar year, which is huge, huge to the bottom line. So now let's make it make sense, actual dollars and cents. And we're going to use really low numbers because it just makes sense. It really paints what the opportunity is. Let's say you stock an average of 69 cars. And through better practices, bringing together your reconditioning and merchandising and controlling that process, you sell 60 additional cars. And between front and back, you average $1,000 per car. So obviously I'm using low numbers. That means just by moving the needle by 2 days, you will pick up an additional $60,000 a year. And that's very low versus the opportunity. Because think of all the extra doc fees. How many more at-bats for finance? How many other opportunities are you creating? And we all know activity breeds activity. So if you're moving your cars faster, people are more excited. You're getting more traffic. It just keeps growing. So that's $5,000 using very low numbers, more per month for doing your job. But by doing it better and more structured and creating a plan and holding people accountable. And that's why we're here today. These small yet meaningful changes to what we're doing add up fast, and they can directly affect the way we make money. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it's the difference between making money and not. But the overarching message is that it takes a team, from the person or people who get you the cars to the people who get them sellable, and finally to the people who market and sell them. We all have to work together to remain profitable and in line with our market. Because that market's fluctuating and it's changing. So always be aware of what's coming around the corner. So by this point, hopefully everybody is thinking differently about what frontline ready really means. It's not just the physical piece. You have to bring your reconditioning, merchandising, and marketing processes together into a single actionable plan that everybody understands. And how similar are those processes to that of a grocery store? Grocery stores engage with and work with all three of those departments daily, just like you should. So the last thing I want to leave you with before we open up for Q&A are the 5 phases to creating and effectively accomplishing a plan. First, set a goal. You have to understand what you want to accomplish. And everybody has to understand what success looks like. Because if not everybody's rowing the same way, you're not going to gain much traction. Second, define the plan. Remember the plan piece? How are we going to get the job done? Break down those individual tasks and the resources needed to get the job done. Remember that? Do you have enough people, the right people? Third, start the plan. Set objectives based on the plan and begin measuring those individual tasks and the resources you use so you can reevaluate, which is number 4, which is monitor the plan. Everything's in motion. You need to be able to react. Do we need more resources? Are we hitting a blocker? Is everything going great? Let's throw more fuel on the fire. And the performance of your team, you need to set and reset objectives based on your need because that target is moving. And 5th, finish the plan. Work the plan. But then get back, remember those recon meetings and that those clear lines of communication? Now you have to go back after you finish the plan and say, hey, what did we deliver versus what we thought we were? What were those roadblocks? What were the issues we encountered? Where did we have great growth? So evaluate the actions you took and then make changes to improve the plan. And then start back over. Resetting a goal, defining the plan, start the plan, monitor the plan, and then come in for the win and just keep constantly reevaluating to get better. The bottom line is you get to decide what frontline ready means at your dealership. And at the end of the day and at the end of the month, your numbers will tell you if you were right. Thank you all very much for being here today. So I'm going to turn over to Dave for Q&A.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. And we are ready to get started with the questions. You perhaps a little bit of historical perspective here. You have been around for a long time. I have heard you say that everyone. I didn't say that. I just said you're seasoned. I've heard you say that everyone struggles with reconditioning. Why is that? And what kind of let's say campaigns could the folks in the reconditioning center do to change the mindset of the dealership on that?
So traditionally, reconditioning, that whole multifaceted piece of moving the cars from raw product all the way through those individual tasks to be done. And an average dealership usually does around 5 different tasks. You have like service, detail, photos, touch-up, interior work, a lot of different moving pieces. Traditionally, that's really been handled by 1 or 2 people. And those 1 or 2 people are just all consumed by it. And what happens is they end up being that gatekeeper and that pivot point. The problem is if you only have 1 or 2 resources handling that flow, you created a bottleneck right there. It's just you can't scale that operation. So I'm a very big proponent of pulling back that armor, involving different people. Don't just put it with one person to handle because regardless of how great that one person is, they have a tap out. You can't scale that. You can't grow past that person's individual talents. So if you create a team, if you divvy up the work that needs to be done, and then hold people accountable to it and give them clear lines of communication, that's where the true growth lift comes in. That's where everybody goes, why did we always do it that way? Because Mike always did it that way. Oh, well, that doesn't make sense. It may have been successful up to a certain point, but it's not truly as successful as it could be.
How much conflict do you see between, say, a dealership's used car department and its service department when it comes to reconditioning, and how do you lessen that?
So generally, I see a good amount traditionally because you would have the sales side of the fence that, again, traditionally, and this is what we're breaking, and dealers are really starting to be more forward in understanding this, but traditionally you would send a car into the service department. hoping that it's a low bill, expecting for them to try to upsell you on a lot of money, rather than being more strategic and being more involved and saying, hey, here are the things that I definitely know it needs done, and let's work together to make sure we get the right car done, get that right product so I can maximize my opportunity. But they just send it in there, and the next thing you know is the service department is reaching out to the sales department saying you need this, 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 and this, because they're on their own mission. They're just trying to maximize their paycheck and maximize their opportunity. And there's really nothing wrong with that, but at the end of the day, it's the dealership's money. It's not the sales department. It's not the service department. If you have a team built and you have clear lines of communication, what I see happen is that that barrier breaks down, and then I see the used car department engaging with the service department saying, hey, look, you're a very valuable resource. When you put tires on there, that helps me sell the car because I'm going to use that as a merchandising and marketing benefit, but I need my cars to get through fast. And the more cars and the better cars you do for me, the more cars I'm going to sell, and I'm going to immediately go out and reinvest and buy more cars, which is going to give you even more at-bats. But it's just understanding that we're all in this together. That's the biggest thing. So, again, it just goes back to that communication.
And you just mentioned merchandising and marketing. So could you provide some tips on how exactly you effectively integrate reconditioning into merchandising and marketing?
So remember I said it's not a spend, it's an investment. If you just consider the money you put into reconditioning as a spend, maybe you're not spending the right amount. When you appraise that car, whether it's for an auction purchase or an appraisal for the new or used car department, if you appraised it correctly, then you should have a good understanding of this is what I believe it needs done: tires, brakes, interior repair, detail. And that's how I came about my valuation that I used as the appraisal. So it really shouldn't be a whole bunch of unknowns once you start the reconditioning plan. So if you use that information, now as that car runs through the reconditioning process, and you can use it. So when service comes back and says, hey, I want to do tires, I want to do brakes, I do this, say, great, do me a favor, do this, this, and this. And then what are the brake measurements on the other? And then you can embed that in your marketing message. If your car is a certified car, tell them what you did. Don't wait for the consumer to ask. They're not going to. Don't wait for your salesperson to ask. Give them ready access. So that's one of the things really we concentrate on iRecon is being able to allow everyone who comes in contact to have access to information that's going to make them the most valuable to the dealership. So if you're in sales, understanding where a car is at physically, not physically, but also where it's at in the reconditioning process will help put the right consumer on the right car at the right time. It helps convey the right message, but it also shows a value for that money that's being spent in the reconditioning process. Because consumers' number one concern isn't price, it's condition. They want to know that you're spending money to recondition their car. They want to know what you're offering and what they're going to get for their money. So we try to free that up. And again, it goes back to communication. Let everybody know what their job to be done is and give them all the tools necessary to do it.
I know that you used to work for a dealership group that was, and is to this day, known for its intense appreciation of its vendors, which I wouldn't say is a common situation out there. And now you're on the other side of the fence, so to speak. But what are some of the best practices that you've seen for effectively communicating with your reconditioning vendors?
So I always say have regular reconditioning meetings. So remember I said that have at least one, per week. And the thing is, you don't want to bore people. You don't want to just have a meeting to have a meeting because somebody said you need to have a meeting. Have a meaningful meeting. It could be 10, 15 minutes. It could be an hour. It just depends on what that need is. But at the same point, that's not just internally for your sales and all your internal employees. You should understand who you're spending your money with and who's touching your cars. You should have regular communication and lines of communication. And I'm not saying you have to meet with them maybe once a week, but you need to find out what that right cadence is so you can sit down with them and say, hey, let's talk a little bit about how many cars per se you detailed in the last 2 weeks versus the previous 2 weeks. Because if you're looking at the screen, it's very easy to see. I can see the historical data. hey, I noticed you actually detailed 10 less cars, but I actually need even more done. So my question to you, Dave, is it just you can only do 20 cars per week, which I don't have a problem with because you do a great job, but I need you to tell me that. I need to know that so that way I can get another resource to pick up those other 10. I can't just have them waiting. So it's unfair of me to yell at you, Dave, if it's something you just physically can't handle at your location. Let me get another resource, and then you're still the main person, still do the 20 cars you can successfully get done, but I still have to have another resource in there. See, that's the benefit of talking and understanding what they're doing and what they go through. Rarely will people just go, you know what, don't send me more work. They love to have work. It's a warm, comfy blanket. But your job as a manager at the dealership is to manage that dealership's money. And if you don't have enough resources and you can't get cars frontline ready in the right amount of time, at the end of the day, they're just going to say, why didn't you deliver? Why didn't you sell enough cars at enough profit and get the job done? It's your job as a manager to manage those resources the most effective way.
And speaking of those meetings, you said that it's a good practice to have short-term and long-term goals established in those sessions. What are some examples of the kind of goals that you have seen come out of those meetings that are really effective and meaningful?
So the first thing that comes to mind is I say, if you have a 100-car goal for the month, let's chunk that out per week. And then the reason I chunk it out, and I'm just using that as an example, because that could be, hey, my goal this week is to get 10 cars detailed. Maybe it's internal or external, just doesn't matter. If you have a smaller, more actionable time frame and amount, then you can make a greater impact before it gets to the point where you can't positively affect change in that 30-day period. So whether you're sitting down with your internal employees and saying, hey, we're supposed to be at 25 cars at the end of this week and we're at 15, where's the hang up? Well, we don't have enough cars frontline ready. Okay, why is that? Well, because I've got 15 cars hung up in detail. Okay, well, why is that? Well, we only have one detail company and they just can't handle it. Okay, so if we can get another resource in another detail company to give us the same, if not greater, job and pick up that slack, you're telling me if I get those extra 10 cars to the front line, you as the sales department can sell them. Absolutely. We have enough customers. We just don't have enough product. That's a very real situation. One thing I learned from creating iRecon was I didn't realize how great the opportunity was because I was already successful. At least what I thought success was. What I found out is once I really started honing in on my reconditioning practices and getting more cars frontline ready faster, and then using that information to effectively merchandise them, we sold a lot more cars. I didn't realize how responsive the market would be. And the car's the star. The car is the star. So every day that car's not online with real pictures is crippling. And again, it goes back to tie them all together.
A final question for you, Mike. I know you've talked about being strategic about reconditioning. Ballpark figure, what percentage of dealerships out there are actually strategic about reconditioning, and why is that the case, and how could that change?
So it's hard to ballpark how many dealers are strategic. When I talk about strategic reconditioning, that's, again, tying back into that appraisal. And once you have that car and you've said these are the items that need to be done, looking at the market and saying, okay, this product should bring this value and sell within this time frame if I spend this money. And then you concentrate on spending that money. There absolutely is a time when a car has tires that are fine, but spending the extra $800 to put brand new tires, even though they passed, will bring me $1,500. But there's absolutely times when spending that $800 will make no difference in the world because the car is just going to sell at that same time period. So strategically means understanding, putting the right people in the right car at the right time, understanding what your go-to-market strategy is per car, what your profit potential is, and spending the right amount for that car. I never concentrate on spending a small amount or a high amount. It's spending the right amount. It's no different than rehabbing a house. New windows, sometimes that adds value. People generally expect windows. But depending on the right area and the right house, New windows is a selling benefit and will market differentiate you from the house next door. That's being strategic. That's actually getting in the car business and really making a difference.
And Mike, thank you for making a difference with us today. If you
Thank
learned something from this session, please spread the word. The recording is going to be available in about 1 hour. You're going to find it at autonews.com/powertraining. As we wind up, the survey is going to pop up on your screen. Please take a few seconds to fill it out. It's a short one, and it will help us improve, and we appreciate it. Thanks again to Mike and to iRecon for bringing us this presentation. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And on behalf of everyone at Automotive News, have a great rest of your day. So long.